You know that it's fun to go out, except I never leave my house. I'm either at work or home, and it seems kind of pathetic just drinking alone. So if you got nothing going on, have some drinks with Ron.
Hello and welcome to Drinks with Ron. I'm Ron, about to have a Bloody Mary. I was just rewatching a couple of the episodes I just did with Parker, where we mixed up some bloodies and did the taste test. And I tell you, he's right. When you get to watching it, you just want to have one. So I mixed this bad boy up and tried to use the Mr. and Mrs. T's just a little bit in there so that I can get rid of that crap, because I'm so bitter that I've been drinking it all these years and not realizing how shitty it was that now I just want it gone. Yeah, one of the other things we noticed is that the chaser for your bloody is irrelevant as long as it's a lager or a pilsner, not something dark. Frankly, it doesn't matter. A Beast, a good shitty light beer. High Life I really like because it's got a little bit of taste to it, so it kind of, otherwise something like this, it just tastes like water going down. So I mixed some of Jimmy Love's, which is has a bit of a taco flavor to it. So I watered it down with the Mr. and Mrs. T's, hoping to achieve some kind of harmonious balance in the glass. Either way, I feel good, because as soon as I'm done with this, I'm about to have me some peanuts in the shell and watch some wrestling. And I have to buy the peanuts in the shell because, if you just have a jar full of peanuts, I'll just shovel them in. But if there's a shell there and I have to work for my food, I have this thing in my head that somehow, the work of shelling them all burns some calories, when in reality what it does is slows me down so I don't just shovel them in like some fucking glutton. The pickles are key. I've noticed that. I went with a bread and butter pickle this time. Really sweet, good offset to the spicy thick Jimmy Love's and the Tabasco I add. So yeah, very good. The bacon vodka again. But the last week had an adventure. As you may have heard me talk about in past episodes, I made some wine. I'm a big wine maker because it's easy to do, it's cheap, it's fun, and it'll get you drunk. So a buddy of mine made me up a label. Ronzo's Reserve. Tastes good, get you drunk. That's our mission statement. Any kind of liquor gets you drunk. This should taste good too. So, was doing a bit of an experiment. Got the whole damn family in on it. A lady I work with has a mulberry tree, so I took my daughter, rake, and a tarp, and went over to this lady's house and beat the shit out of the mulberry tree till the tarp was full of them. Got about a half-gallon of mulberries. My daughter and myself took them back to my mom's house, where we got all three of us sorted through, picked all the shit out, and ground them up, juiced them. And then Mom had a bunch of raspberries from last year that she had frozen and vacuum sealed that are just... Raspberry, if it ain't fresh, is pretty much done for in my book. So, yeah. So we ground those up, juiced them. By the time we were done, we had about 2.5 quarts of this juice. A lot of shit floating in it. But, yeah, I took all the juice, dumped it in a gallon jar. I had to add a lot of sugar because the raspberries weren't overly ripe and they weren't really sweet. I was hoping the mulberries would balance that out, but it didn't really work quite that way. Sweetened it up with a lot of sugar so the yeast had something to react with. And then it was thick. I mean, you talk about juice. I mean, this shit was like syrup. So I had to cut it with a lot of water so that it was a decent wine-like consistency, and put it in there. And I had the same deal last year. When we moved to this new house, I had a bag of the frozen raspberries in the freezer that Mom had given me, And like I said, once they're frozen, what you gonna do with them? Well, we moved, they thawed. Now, really, what the fuck are you gonna do with them? So I threw them in a jug, added some yeast, and let them go. But I did it totally wrong last year. But I had the same situation. I put the yeast in, capped it off, nothing happened. I'm sitting there thinking, fuck. Well, this year I had cautioned myself because I remember what happened last year. And that is that it eventually took off with a vengeance, which is exactly what happened this year. So I put them in Friday morning, and by Friday night, I was drinking out on the porch with Danch. I know you got to be absolutely shocked that I was out drinking on the porch, but yeah, my buddy Danch, we came downstairs afterwards, and when I walked back to the back room, not only was it reacting, but gone up through the bent glass tube and, you know, just bubbling fucking juice everywhere. So I had to dump out some of the shit that floated to the top. But it's always weird. I was told when PJ was here doing the last few episodes, I said I have the pizza oven in the back room, and his daughter was here a few weeks before that playing with my daughter, and they'd gone in there to cook a pizza or check on the pizza I was cooking for them. And I told him, I said, God, I always get so nervous that, you know, especially some kid's going to walk into the back room and see all these big jars with tubes sticking out of them and say, yeah, Ron's got all these jars with glass tubes sticking out, and they're bubbling and they're making noises. And it's like, yeah, that's how rumors get started. So I had to make sure I hauled the jars out and showed him this is if she said she saw anything that looked weird and not quite right, it was wine and not any other glass jar that could make some sort of bubbling. So yeah, I got them going. So I figure about 3 months. So about middle of October, once football's just starting to get going, we're going to crack into that, and perhaps before a kickoff of one of the Pittsburgh games, I will bust a bottle out, and whoever comes to watch the games this year, we have a good core of Steelers fans. I usually get my mom, my buddy Chris, sometimes my buddy Whizbomb. Usually at least 2 of us, sometimes as many as 4 or 5. But if we get a good crew, I'll pop a bottle and we'll have a sampling of the raspberry mulberry concoction and see if it is an epic fail like the one last year was an absolute epic fail. I think I've got this right, but we will see. I already have a bottle promised to the lady where I got the mulberries. Her son and her brother both want to sample the goodness. So like I say, now there's a little bit of pressure because if it's anything like the last few bottles I made, I've mentioned it before, I have like 4 gallons of borderline shitty wine in that fridge. Just some of it is just about undrinkable. I got my daughter a bottle. She went to her friend's house for New Year's Eve, which, you know, so they wanted the bottle of wine. So, you know, most people get the sparkling grape juice. Not me. I got the alcohol removed wine, which was like a dry red wine, tasted like shit. So they popped it, took 1 drink, spit it out. She brought the whole thing home full. And I'm not going to waste any money, so I dumped it in a gallon jar, added some sugar, and we're gonna rewind that shit. So I had a gallon that just tastes like horrible dry red wine, and I proceeded to dump that gallon amongst my 3 other gallons until pretty soon I'd mixed them all together, and there was 3 or 4 gallons going, and none of them were particularly anything. Some of the raspberry stuff I had started last year was mixed in with the dry red crap, was mixed in with some other junk I had started. It was a raspberry pomegranate or some shit. Just all of it mixed together, none of it good. So I adopted the name Trainwreck. So I've got about 4 gallons of Trainwreck in there, and right now I'm back to my original recipe that I did on Drinks with Ron last year, which I've gone with the name Grape Ape, which Grape Ape was a hit. I got about 4 or 5 bottles of that. That shit didn't last a month. between me cracking into them, and I actually took one to dinner at the mother-in-law's house, at the in-laws, and not only did it all get drank, but she even used some of the grape ape to make the chicken marsala. So it's like, hey, shit, my wine's all throughout this, and it was actually good. So I say that didn't last, but this horrible, undrinkable shit I'm going to have for a long, long time to come. So I'm about to be an amateur wino. Before I do, I'm going to work on polishing off the many, many bottles of mixer that I'm very grateful to friend and viewer and now guest, PJ, for bringing to me and giving to me and for making me re-examine my mixers. Say, I'm using the Jimmy Loves, which I am a fan of. Very good, very thick, very spicy, has a taco flavor. But our winner was Zing Zang. And it's got a little zing to it itself. So, I'm going to get back to my drinking, peanut eating, and wrestling watching. So for Drinks with Ron, I'm Ron, sleeveless, signing off.